Hello everyone, Vlad here. Today we're going to be installing LEDs into the back of my Ford Maverick pickup. So let's jump on in. So here we are with our supplies. Here I have some pop sockets that are going to be used for some cable management, also zip ties for cable management. I have some wire strippers, two different kinds. I'll figure out which one I want to use. Some stuff for cutting wire and crimping these connections. A battery to test some of the circuits before I actually plug it up into the car. This is the Pigtail supplied by Ford. It actually snaps into some pre-made circuitry in the bed of the Ford Maverick, so that'll make things easier for us. We don't have to wire anything directly to the battery or a fuse box. Then we have some bullet style connectors for our switch wiring, and then we have our LEDs. These are modular. I got them from Amazon. They also have 3M on the back, so I'm going to use that to mount them initially onto the bed of the truck. And then I have my socket set. That's going to be used for removing these bolts so that I can get behind these lights and pull some of the wiring through for wiring our lights. So those are our supplies, and we'll get things started by doing some pre-wiring and get things going. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some male end of these bullet style connectors onto the end of my Ford supplied little outlet here, and that's so that we can easily hook up our cables for the rest of our circuit and the switch later on. So I'm going to do that. So basically strip the wire at the end and then thread it into the bottom end of this hole, and then you're going to use crimping tool of your pliers, just back end of here of your pliers, to crimp those down and secure them in place. But that's going to make this quick and easy connect and disconnect of our lights as we go. So the thing we're going to do is prepare our switch. So I'm going to put a female end of these little bullet clips for the wiring connection onto the end of both of these so that it will accept our wiring for the rest of the project. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to drill a hole. Now I'm going to put this on the driver's side where I have this blank panel. I'm going to drill a hole through there, and that's going to be where we mount our switch to. So if you look at the back of the packaging for your switch, it's going to tell you how big of a hole you need to get for this to go through. Another quick way to tell is to take the ring off and then just size that up against your drill bit. If this will slide over the drill bit, or just barely be there for tightness, then that should be the right size bit to use. If it's really loose, there's a lot of space, then you're going to need a different drill bit. So you can use this ring to kind of gauge the size, or you can just read the back of the package and it'll tell you the right thing to do. But I'm going to drill that here on the upper portion of this panel so that we can put our switch in, and once that is done and affixed, then we can move on to the next step of the project. Alright, now we need to remove this panel, and these bolts here take a 10mm socket. And because I installed my toolbox previously, I'm going to need some of these star bits to remove these screws here, but that should only take a second. That's going to give us access to the interior portion of the bed so we can run our wiring up to the top here, or from the top here down to our switch, and then we'll run the stuff from the other side of the bed behind this panel. So here we are, we're in the bed of the Maverick, and the lighting is pretty bad, but still, this panel is completely open. We can see down into the bed of the truck. So all our wiring is going to go behind this panel. We've gone ahead and put our switch into this panel. Just a note, the little part of your switch should have probably a notch in it. That's usually denotes that it's the bottom of the switch. So that's how I know which side is the right way up on this one. And later on we'll secure this in a different manner so that we get a more waterproof seal. But for now, this is going to hold it so we can get everything ready to go. So now we need to figure out where our LED placement is going to go. And let me show you this in the bed of your Maverick. So you have these holes that are pre-drilled in the top of your Maverick. Okay, we're going to use those as little ties for our wiring so that it doesn't hang loose below the little bed of the truck. And then we're actually going to take our wiring through this hole here and down inside of the bed of the truck to this panel. So you won't see any wiring when we're done. We're going to use the adhesive to put these use the adhesive to get these mocked up to the side of the truck. And then we're going to secure the wiring using some of those pop sockets or pop rivets, and bringing the wiring all the way to the back of the bed to this final large hole, and we're going to feed that down to our larger hole here. And then we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side of the bed, but we're going to have to take it below the tailgate and bring the wiring all the way up into this cavity. So for that, we may need to pull this back tail light, but we'll get to that once the time passes and we're on that portion of the project. So let's go ahead and mock up these lights and bring the wiring where we want it to be. Alright, so I've got my LED stuck to the side of the bed using this adhesive, and you kind of see that I used where these bolts or holes were already drilled to kind of line up where I wanted things to go, so that that cabling could be easily secured there. Still got a little bit of play so I can get it secured without ripping anything. Now I threaded the wire through this upper hole, and that got it into this little cavity in between. You can kind of see in here you've got this cavity and then you got another cavity, and this was usually filled by this little plug here. So I pulled that out and I could see the wire that I was feeding through this hole, and so I pushed it through there, which allowed me to bring it down and through our hole here. And so now I can kind of just pull it tight so that all of our cabling is coming through our box hole here in the bed, and we'll be good to go for our driver's side. And now we need to work on the passenger side lighting. Alright, here's the passenger side, and as you can tell, I did the exact same thing as I did on the driver's side, and I went ahead and ran my wire through this upper hole and then pulled it down through the plug to get it into the inner portion of the body. Now what you're going to have to do on this one is actually go and find your wire below the truck to pull that through, and we're going to run it over underneath the body of the truck to the driver's side. Now I'm on the underside of the Maverick now, on the passenger side, and this is the wheel well. As you can see, they put this little plastic piece here that is some sort of housing. There's nothing really in it. It's kind of empty. It leads over to this spare tire compartment area, but so you'll have to find your wire hidden inside of this box as it comes down inside of the body, and then you're going to need to wire it and take it over to this side. You can see the light coming through there where we have that panel open. So we're going to need to get the wire over there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it around here underneath the bed, the tailgate, and then up over here, making sure I don't come in contact with this exhaust and stuff. And right now I'm just going to keep it loose, right? I'm not going to zip tie anything down. We're going to do that at the end, but we want to make sure we have enough slack and that we're not causing any troubles by tying this down too early. So we're just going to run the wire loosely, make sure there's plenty of slack that we can take that up when we zip tie things down later, and avoid any moving parts that this could get crimped into later on as you use your truck. Alright, we're getting close to the end of the build where we need to do the final wiring, and what you're going to need to do is gain access to either side of the posts of your Maverick, and you'll see that you have these little 12 volt DC FlexBed panels, and behind them is this clip, and that clip snaps perfectly into this pigtail that you should have gotten when you bought your truck, and that we prepared earlier with these male quick connects, these bullet quick connects. Now I unfortunately installed this toolbox before doing any of this wiring, and so I've covered up the one on the driver's side. So it's going to be easier for me to actually remove this tailgate lamp by removing these two screws from the housing and pulling this out, so that I can access that panel without any problems and having to remove my toolbox completely, because I didn't feel like doing two installations today, or an uninstallation and then a reinstall. So I'm just going to do these panels because it's going to save me time than removing this whole toolbox out of the way. Okay, so I was able to pull my tail lamp, and this is the plug for the tail lamp, but this one here is the plug for the FlexBed, and it connects to this daisy chain. This pigtail will snap into there just perfectly. Now don't snap it in just yet. All we want to do is make sure that we feed our cabling for our pigtail through here to our open little channel so we can finish our wiring. And the last thing we're going to do is hook this up to electricity. We do not want to introduce any electricity into the circuit while we're working on it. You should even unplug your battery while you do any of this work, but for now I don't want to plug anything in. I'm leaving everything completely dead, no worries about any short circuiting at this point. We just want to make sure that the cabling reaches where it needs to as we complete the wiring. Alright, we're approaching the end of our wiring adventure. What I have here in my hands are the positive and negative cables for our two sets of lights, passenger and driver. And what I did is I just went ahead and spun these two wire ends together. Make sure positive is with positive, negative is with negative. Otherwise, you're going to short something because you have your wires crossed. That is not meant to be a pun or anything funny. You make sure that this is correct. Now, based off of what I've done so far with the wiring connections, our positive side will need a male connector to connect to this switch connection, and then our negative side will need a female connector to connect to the male side of this positive daisy chain. So it is important that you put the correct connector on here. We want a male connector for positive, a female connector for our negative, and we need to make sure that our connection with these connectors, they're there in the bed there, is secure, that they're not coming out, and that these wires aren't loose. If you want to make sure that you aren't going to have any of these wires pulled out later, I suggest grabbing yourself some silver solder and soldering these two wires together, these two positive ones and then these two negative ones together. That makes sure that they both get a good connection and they're not going to pull out of your connector at a later time. So here we are, we're going to finalize our wiring. So what did I do? I have taken the positive sides of our LEDs, plugged them into the upper portion of our wiring for our switch. That way up is on, down is off. So I need, when it's up here, it should be completing this circuit to send power through this cable. And then I've taken my ground and connected that to the side of my daisy chain. This is the part that's going to connect to our Ford connector in our FlexBed. And this part here is our positive. This one's going to go into the bottom terminal of our switch, and that will complete our electrical. Then we can plug it into our socket and we will be able to flip the switch and test to make sure everything is working before we move forward and start putting things back together, zip tying our cables secure, that sort of thing. Okay, so our wiring is all connected. You can see it here and is connected to our port on the other side of here into the FlexBed. And now is the moment of truth. I have the keys in the ignition. The truck is not on, but this circuit is only live when you have the keys in the ignition and you have it turned to the auxiliary setting. You don't have to turn it fully on, but anyway, flipping our switch, our LEDs came on. We are good on our passenger side as well. So now everything is working the way we intended. Now we need to tidy things up with our cable management, and we're also going to take some electrical tape and we're going to go ahead and wrap all of these connections that we've made so that they are protected from things like water. They are insulated here with these, but we want to make waterproof by putting some electrical tape on it as well. Alright, I am losing daylight, but I'm not going to allow that to let me do things half backwards. So I have gone ahead and taped up all of my connections back here to make them a little bit more water resistant. Now, the last thing I want to do is, this is a sealed terminal, but I want to make sure that it's fully waterproof. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this bolt up front here. I'm going to take a little bit of this ultra clear sealant here that is kind of like silicone, and I'm going to put it on here on this threading as around this hole, and then tighten it back down. And that, once that dries, is going to give me a nice waterproof seal from this panel to the back of the panel, so I know no water is leaking through where I drilled this hole and connected it to get back into that back panel to rust anything out or to cause any trouble with any electrical that I've put in. Alright, I went ahead and applied my sealant to the switch. Now my little switch also came with this rubber boot that just kind of slides over everything and screws down to give a little bit extra water protection, and we're going to go ahead and use this to our advantage and make sure that our lighting and electrical is as waterproof as possible. This should make everything nice and tight and worry free when it comes to water getting into our electrical circuit. For cable management back here in the bed, I couldn't find any zip ties with like the plastic push pins to go into the little holes under here. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use these little pop rivets. I'm going to put a little wire cable clamp over the wire. Then I'm going to put this through the cable clamp. I'm going to put this between the cable clamp and the truck bed. And then I'm going to use the pop rivet gun to rivet everything into that hole, and that will hold our cable in place without any issues. I'm going to do that in two places, one here and one over towards the back. That should hold this cable, and do the same thing on the other side of the truck. And I think that'll work out pretty well. Now, I did make sure that I used aluminum rivets, not steel ones, so I don't have to worry about rust. So here we are. I'm at the back of the truck. Let's go ahead and flip these newly installed lights on. And look at there. Nice set of lighting. Lights up the entire bed. And we did it all ourselves with a little bit of time and a little bit of parts that didn't cost us very much. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest content from Vlad Administrator Gaming. And until next time, I'll see you in the wasteland.